compound to the public as it was at the beginning. Unfortunately, during these 50 years, for security reasons and for many other historical reasons, the United Nations has not been able to remain open to the public, but we want to reopen particularly this building for the Ethiopian, but also for all the other delegates, for the African people, and for the tourists that are coming to Addis Ababa in order to enjoy this wonderful building. The monumental fountain that is in front of the building was conceived to filter the, at that time, capital of the country with the concept of the Pan-Africanism, because the idea of the United Nations and the Organization of the African Unity was to establish a link between all the member states, in this particular case the capital of Ethiopia, and the concept and principle of Pan-Africanism that at that time was just starting. So this fountain, that is a monumental fountain, should, in the idea of the architect, represent this filter, the idea of a monumental bridge between these two concepts. The facade is always representing the building, in any case, not only for this landmark. In this case, the facade is fragmented and very rhythmed by the small columns, but is also transparent. Transparent because in the idea of the founding father, the African government should be transparent to their people. The rotunda that is on the ground floor was originally dedicated to the public. The first floor where we stand, it is the floor for the delegates, for the governments. The ground floor was for the public. And in our idea, as I said, we wanted to restore that principle and that concept. We wanted that the ground floor will be the place for the visitor center in order for the public to enjoy and to know the history of the United Nations, the Pan-Africanism institution, as well as this building. The honor stair, that was the stair used by the dignitaries. We will see soon a picture of the Queen Elizabeth when she was visiting this building. It represents a barrier, but we want to break that barrier, and in our project we will create some situation that will allow all people to have access to the building and to enjoy the building. This building will be one of the most advanced in Africa in terms of equitable and universal accessibility. The lobby of this building is maybe one of the most beautiful area that not only in Africa but in many of the public buildings. The marvelous stained glass made by Afework is unique. It represents the history, in the idea of the emperor, in the idea of the artist, it represents the history of Africa. It's divided into 3 sections. There is one section for the past, one section for the present at that time that represent the struggle against the colonialism and the fight against the colonialism, and the future in the middle with the idea that the people one day at that time would be able to self-determine and self-govern their own destiny and their own future. The lobby also represents the fact that this building that was inspired by the headquarters of the United Nations in New York, that was built few years before this building, that stained glass and other marvelous art that we have in this building are aimed to show that this building is placed in its context. It is in Africa, it is not in New York or in any other place. For that reason, we have the stained glass that is showing the history of Africa, but we have also the canvas and linen that is surrounding this plenary hall, his marvelous nature, including the flora. The first tree that you see just coming in is the baobab, that is unique in Africa. The hall where we stand. This hall is, how I can say, Your Excellence and the Executive Secretary has already said, for 50 years in this building, in this hall, there were meetings of head of states, the founding father, I think all the great events that took place here, and I think almost all the leaders of Africa passed through this hall and were able to be here. So, what we have to do, we have to preserve this history, but we have to make this hall safe, we have to make this hall functional, we have to give the state-of-the-art technology, and we have almost all to make it accessible, as I said before. It shall be universally and equitable, accessible for people. We have representing of some institutions here that are working in Ethiopia on accessibility, that have been involved in the design and will continue be engaged to ensure that all the building, not only this hall, will be equitable, with equitable accessibility. The idea is to renovate this hall to make it last for another half a century. We want, maybe the younger of us will be here in 50 years, I imagine, like Ambassador Conjit is here for the second time after I imagine at that time she was much younger when she came with the emperor to inaugurate this hall. There are in this hall some features that are recalling the United Nations. We don't have to forget that this was built to be the headquarters of the United Nations as well. We have the green marble that I think everybody has seen when the president are speaking in New York, and it will be renovated. There are some wooden buttons, but there are also some part of the harmony that is given by the symmetry. There is also some particular features that are only of this hall. One of them is that it is open. I imagine many of you, if not all of you, have been in so many conference halls, and all the conference halls are closed. Like to guarantee the comfort and to guarantee the perfect audio. The architect was able to create a good audio in this building, keeping this building open. Why open? Because, as I said, the facade is transparent, and the decisions that were taken here should not be secret to the continent, to the people of the continent, let's say. So the backstage it was the place for the bilateral meetings that should not be kept secret. Again, remembering that at that time, most of the decisions for Africa were unfortunately taken out of Africa. Just arriving to conclude, I want to make some reference to the original dedication that the emperor made when inaugurated this building. I will leave the floor after to Ambassador Conjit, that for sure has better knowledge of what happened at that time, but I just wanted to remember that the emperor dedicated these people to the service of the this building to the service of the African people.
It was very exciting for us to see everything. I want to say the obvious and say that this building, as previous speakers have said, is a very historical building. Historical building, not because of only the OAU was established here, but because Pan-Africanism, decolonization, and economic development, and you name it, were all frankly discussed here by the leaders, the forefathers, the foremothers. I should add also that there were many of us at that time, but yes, they were behind the forefathers. So, as Dr. Vera said, this painting we have at the back is very interesting, and there is that one place which is empty. It should have had the face of somebody. I think you would be very proud of our ancestors if you read the history and the debate that took place, why that place should remain open. We should learn from that and be actually courageous enough to sort of take the same decisions now. At any rate, this building was built by the Ethiopian government, and Haile Selassie gave it to the United Nations when Economic Commission was established. And after that, as was said, it was used for the OAU, and for many years the OAU was meeting here until, of course, as Dr. Vera said, it built its own state-of-the-art building. I want to say that we are grateful to the United Nations for deciding to renovate this complex.
Thank the municipality. Now we are going to sign with the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Every time I walk into this hall, you have a sense and a feeling, both of excitement, but also an immense feeling of humility to think of what came before us in this hall, what happened. It is the beginning, essentially, of who we are as an African community and this African journey that we are about to undertake. I think in this hall was the demonstration, or the first demonstration, of the conversation of bringing Africans together. Many, many years later, we are talking about regional integration, regional trade, and it all started here. And as many of you will know, at the time, Emperor Haile Selassie himself said that Africa will never be strong if we were not strong together. And I think that is what this hall demonstrates for us. We are the custodians of this hall, because the government of Ethiopia decided to give this hall to the United Nations initially at the time. And as many of you know, and many of you celebrated with us last year, it was ECA's 60th anniversary, and we celebrated part of that process also in this hall with members of the government. The renovation of this hall is a symbolic remembrance of, the past, but ensuring I think that those who come ahead of us will also know and understand and have the pleasure and the privilege of walking in this hall to understand exactly how their history unfolded. I think when we look at those pictures or that one painting, it is, and I'm always struck by the fact that there is a missing picture. And we take a moment to remember that even as we were coming together in this hall as Africans to begin to decide that Africa was going to be independent, there were still struggles. And that decision for African unity was not as easy, and it must be something that we cherish. And every time I go anywhere and I see that, I say to myself, yes, we are still fighting. Today we are over 50 of us in the union, and we believe that this space should be a space for all of them, but also for those who come in behind us. What we are doing here today is to say, the African Union has moved. This was the birthplace of the Organization of African Unity. The African Union has now moved to a much more glorious and illustrious building, and we are all very proud of that. But the history of its formation remains here and will always remain here. And for us, I think we have to continue to make sure that we maintain our economic homegrown strategy, but also the tourism plan that you're just about going to be launching. This clearly is part of that process and should be part, hopefully, of the tourism agenda of the government, to have visitors visit the Africa Hall to see where this project called African Unity in the African Union started.
Regardless of the successive change of governments, Ethiopia was committed to support the Commission in availing the necessary facilities and land allocation for the expansion of the headquarters of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. The agreement for the renovation and expansion of the African Hall has been signed on 13 April 2018. We are pleased to note that under the able leadership of Her Excellency Dr. Vera and her team, this delicate project has started moving steadily. The renovation of Africa Hall is part of the preservation of African history and heritage, together with its historical values, artistic design and architectural legacy. The launching of the renovation project and the signing of an additional land agreement towards the project will facilitate the smooth running of the renovative project with a view to finalize it within the